I also played, let's say, two games. One is I started the Mass Effect trilogy after being away from it for many, many, many years. And man, that Mass Effect 1 gives like an incredible first impression and is just the first part of that game is so good and the voiced codecs and how well thought out all the aliens are is great. And then the more I'm playing it, I'm like, wow, there's a thing they threw away. There's a detail they retconned.
It's
This
the only
character's entire
impression I've ever had.
backstory makes
That
no sense. Like I picked the sole survivor backstory for Shepard because in Mass Effect 1 you find out that a terrorist organization was responsible for killing his whole squad and traumatizing him. But that's the same organization you go to work for in the second game, and if you bring it up, they're like, "Oh, that was a splinter group. We didn't tell them to do that." And then Shepard goes, "Okay, I guess it's okay to work for you terrorists now because you guys aren't really the ones who can." And shit, like you just get to see all the little pieces that they picked up and threw away because they didn't think it was great. There's this
They-
long and involved explanation for why guns don't need ammunition. And then in the second game, they're like, "Ah, crap,
Yeah.
the shooting's better if you have to reload, so fuck it, there's heat sinks
No,
now."
but the name of the franchise is based on the loading of the fucking gun
No,
with any ammunition. It's the Mass Effect. What the fuck are you talking about? They changed that?
Don't worry about it.
No
The heat
way!
sinks out of the terminus systems lets the gun shoot
The
more
name of the fucking
hotness faster.
franchise.
No, shh.
I mean, that was also about ships traveling between systems, right? Like the big
Yeah, it's all technology in
Oh,
in that
boy.
yeah,
universe.
the big relay is also
Okay.
a Mass Effect thing. But for me,
The Mass
I
Effect-
miss the I
Sorry,
miss the
dude.
grayscale of it, right? Like the morality of the game is like this big spectrum, right? There are some things that are pretty good and some things that are pretty bad, and everything in between. And then the second game comes along, it's like actually everything is exactly one shade of gray, and in the first game it was like any AI wants to kill everyone. That's just what AI does in our universe. And to me that was like, oh, this is really cool. Like this is neat world building. And then the second game, like actually only some AI want to destroy people, and there's some really edgelord robots who are pretty cool and can be your friend. And that just it took
Doc.
away like it's filing off the edges, and it made me sad.
You're a very smart guy, and I like you very much. But this is a pro Legion household, edgy or not.
I love Legion. I just hate how they got there.
So
Legion
Oh,
actually
I'll
is like
agree,
one of the
I'll
best
agree
games.
with you every step of the way. The way they got there, particularly with Legion, is like them throwing out the first third of the game that was way better than the first third of the game that we got, and it's infuriating.
Okay, so I've always been under the impression, based on what everyone has told me, that because I've only played the first one, and I've heard that like 2's still great, 3 is where you dodge the bullet. That seemed to be what everyone is telling me, but
So
now
it
that
depends.
goalpost is moving.
It depends because it depends what bullets you feel like you need to dodge. So I love Mass Effect 2. I think it's a great game. However, it is a very, very different game with different goals and different priorities than 1. And if you were way, way into everything that 1 had, to the exclusion of some of the stuff that 2 likes, 2 has some bullets for you. Me,
Okay.
I like those bullets. I'm happy to be shot with those bullets. But there's some stupid, stupid shit in 2. It's just that 3 has stupid, stupid shit that hurts everyone.
Do either of
Everyone can
do
be
either of them
united in how much they don't like being shot by Mass Effect 3's bullets.
would you say that either of them surpass 1?
Most people have said that 2 surpasses 1. I personally think that 1 is the only good game in the series. But
I will say that they're both about the same, but they're so different that despite their similarities, they might as well be different genres.
I like the depth of characters in the first game and the way that the more you talk to them over time, they change. Like, I did some angry tweets. They weren't really that angry, but I did some tweets about Garrus a few weeks ago, and I was like, he starts out as a cop, look, right? And it was mostly to annoy some friends who really like him, and nothing more than that. But it blew up because some
That's
like
how all
angry.
my stupid tweets start.
Yeah, Some angry dude online was like, this guy's SJW trying to change character. It's like, you missed the point. Like, the game itself says that Garrus is a bad person, but you can change him. And that, to me, was like, oh, this is a really cool video game. It's like, Mass Effect was the first game I played where, like, characters actually transform through the course of the game based on how you talk to them. And so, to me, that's like, this is fucking amazing. And then 2 comes along, and everyone's like, I am the coolest, hottest person in the universe, and also I'm a badass, but I have one major regret. And every single character in the game is like that. Like, Dane's like, oh, I may be a really cool hot fish man, but I murder people and I feel sad about it. And, you know, Miranda's like, I am the hottest, most perfect woman in the universe, but I'm too perfect and I feel sad about that. Like, every single character is just like, I have one regret, but I'm also a really cool badass, but I'm morally gray. And we all have the exact same shade of moral gray. And I didn't like that about Mass Effect 2.
The changing
because you don't change the characters.
The changing of their disposition, that sounds like what KOTOR was going for with light siding and dark siding, and especially in 2.
It felt like BioWare just was getting better at doing that. And then Mass Effect 2 comes along and suddenly everyone's like fixed. They just have one specific morality that never changes.
The difference between 1 and 2 is in 1, BioWare looks at you, the player, and goes, you can change them. And in 2, you look at the hot character, be they a lady or a fishman or a bird creature, and go, I can fix them.
Now, admittedly, at least with my frame of reference being like KOTOR 2, what does get really confusing is that every character has their fixed point or fixed alignment, where if you answer certain things they like, and if you answer certain things they hate it. But then they bend towards you, so you have your, you know, like light side AK, for example, HK, excuse me, but he still responds the same to the same questions that are more dark side. You know what I mean? Like, so you have a confusing thing where now he's blue, but he still wants you to give red answers. So that was kind of like a confusing thing happening in that specific example.
So Mass Effect has the my favorite version of that, where there's all your characters all exist on a spectrum of Renegade to Paragon, and you have to have 2 characters. So one will always say the Paragon response, and one will always say the Renegade response. But it breaks really hard if you take characters that are on like the same alignment and are very close to each other. So if you take like Liara and Tali to like the Rachni, Liara's like, I don't know, maybe we shouldn't genocide them. And Tali, who is like otherwise relatively reasonable for most of the game, will go, you gotta kill them all! They're all gonna die!
Okay.
You're like, whoa.
The first conversation you have with Tali on the ship, and I'd forgotten this completely. The first conversation you have with her on board your ship, you're like, so tell me about your entire species history, which is a totally normal thing to ask. And she's like, yeah, so we invented sentient vacuum cleaners, and when we found out that they were sentient, we just immediately declared, like, total annihilation. Because we realized they probably wouldn't want to work for us if they were sentient. And I'm, like, sitting here as, you know, not 2008 Doc, but 2021 Doc, and I'm like, huh. There might be a problem with that, morally speaking. So Tali's always been pro-genocide. She sees absolutely nothing wrong with killing things that might not want to be forced to be, you know, toasters and vacuum cleaners.
It's funny.
It starts out that way.
Like, I love Mass Effect, the series in general. Like, even if I hadn't played the 3rd one, I will get to it. But there is something that's happening to me when I'm playing these games so long after, and it's what you just described, which is 2008 Pat playing through them versus 2021 Pat. I have such a different worldview and more knowledge about, like, the planet that I'm looking at some of this shit, and the thing that is, like, whiplashing me so hard is, like, wow, Liara just tells you, like 3 sentences in, so yeah, this is how we bone. Yeah, this is boning. Yeah, Or
that is
the
pretty
Paragon
early,
option. The Paragon options that
true.
I remember being like, oh man, Shepard's like a good guy. He's doing what he can, and I'm like going through all these Paragon options, and like most of them are just like narking and snitching on people, and like they have no moral context at all. It's just him going, "This is against the law. I should report you."
Yeah.
So I mean, so the Asari being introduced as the Twi'lek of the universe, like
Yeah.
pretty much, it's like, okay, so 2008 you in whatever teenage years is sitting there wondering, and then they just answer the question right away, going like, yeah, no, we're compatible. Don't worry. Wink
Yeah.
to the fourth wall.
That's
You know.
exactly what it is.
I
It's
saw
100% what it is.
I saw somebody pointing out the other day, you know, like one of the earliest things you hear about any Asari is like, oh yeah, they spend their maiden years, you can't see me air quoting, but I'm air quoting, in strip clubs, being strippers. And it's like, that's a weird species trait to have. I don't think I even noticed that the first time I played.
It's
and
because they're
second
the
time-
blue sex race.
Yeah,
Twi'lek.
it's like,
we're doing Twi'lek, you know.
I came up with a race like that once when I was 17. You know,
Yeah.
at 32, I wouldn't do that, and I'm pretty sure the people who were making the game originally weren't like that. But as I'm playing the game, I'm noticing Paragon and Renegade. It seems like somebody just sat down and was like, okay, we need to have a branch point here. Is this good guy comment or bad guy comment? There's no context. It seems like they made a good guy, bad guy.
Yeah,
version,
Renegade
and
Shepard
that's it.
often doesn't agree with himself.
Yeah.
Which is what's really, really wild. Like Paragon Shepard is all about the law and snitching. It's like lawful good to like the absolute most absurd, but Renegade Shepard is like chaotic evil and will sometimes argue against his own goals in different scenes based on what he wants. It's just he needs to do something like an asshole right now.
Yes. I heard from a friend that when Jennifer Hale recorded, she played like Paragon as like one character and Renegade is a different character. So they're like, if you do a pure Paragon or pure Renegade run, Jennifer Hale is amazing. But Mark Meer didn't do that. He played it all like one person. So for people who do a pure run, Mark Meer seems kind of bland. But apparently I think that's his name, right? I think it's the actor. But
Yeah, it's Mark
when
Meer,
you play, yeah. When you play as Manshep, he's actually best when you pick options based on what you're feeling in the moment, like what makes the most sense to you. And he ends up actually working out really well because he's kind of more neutral in his entire approach. So it lets you
But
pick Paragon and Renegade without feeling like you're just a nut job who's all over the place. But if
Except
you're doing a
that's
pure,
good
like,
for the voice acting, but the game's mechanics punish you for that.
yeah, oh, absolutely. Like the game is weird. The game is definitely weird. But I did have more fun actually playing as like what response actually makes sense. Before I knew that top side was always Paragon and bottom was always Renegade, I just picked whatever sounded good. That I actually loved the game more when I was doing that. Like that's where the writing really I think comes out and is at its best. So it's a weird game in that regard.
I was having a much enjoyment when I started the game and decided that I was going to be pretty nice to everybody except Ashley. And every time she tried to talk to me, I would respond with shit like, "Why are you on my ship? Get off my ship! I hate you." Only to get, and so I get to the Citadel, and I'm looking at the alignment chart that they give you, and it's like I'm like 2 pips in a Renegade with like a tiny little sliver of Paragon, and I'm like, I was nice to everyone but Ashley. I did every possible Paragon choice whatsoever. Except every time she talked to me, I told her to get the fuck out of my face. And the game has decided that means that I'm an asshole.
You know, I'm still thinking about how you mentioned that, like, the whole Volus and Elcor moment just never happens again. And I'm so bummed about that.
Yeah.
Like, the introduction of these really well thought out races that have interesting histories that just immediately make you go, oh my god, this is everything is this considered, this is going to be amazing, only to realize that it's just super front loaded to make you think that sucks, man.
A lot of Mass Effect 1 is really front loaded. Like the codex entries are exhaustive and voluminous, like they're gigantic. They tell you all sorts of shit.
Love them.
And they're all voiced. Well, not all of them. Sorry, all the primary ones are voiced, but still, there's like, wow, these guys really care about their universe. Until you play 2, and they're like, I don't care that much.
Yeah, and I mean, now that we live in a world where like codec screens are like they can get insanely exhaustive, and I mean, I mean, fuck, we just played 13 Sentinels. Like you can go as hard
Yeah.
with those as possible. Like I still
Oh,
have
big reminder. Well, hold on. On camera, within the view of everyone and God, Doc, you really got to play 13 Sentinels.
I have it. I haven't started it yet, but I'm going
Cool.
to. Well, I did start it, but
It's
I
very
got
good.
to
I
that
think
like
you'd like it.
first scene with the robot.
Cool. Yeah.
So
Well, so that's a game where the you're going to be looking at the codec screen. You know what I mean? And like I was just talking about how like even like Doom has like this big pause for lore section and stuff like that. And I kind of realized that like I remember there was a time where I used to be like, look, show don't tell. And but then at the same time it's like you can't, that's not always possible. There's a lot of things. And we were just talking about how like you're gonna walk around in a walking simulator and you're gonna hear about the cooler things, There's always stuff that like I guess text will be able to convey that were just not in the scope of whatever the game was planning anyway. And I think at least going back to my impressions of it with Mass Effect 1, it was a lot of codec, but it was really engaging to listen to because I felt like coming out of it like I had a world built in my head, you know what I mean? Like I understood where I was in this universe a lot earlier than you usually do stepping into a new world, a new setting.
but I don't read lore in most games, right? But in Mass Effect, there was this one that's always stuck with me, which is like they were flying above the surface of a planet and they found like something underneath gas clouds, but whenever they got close, it would disappear. And there was like this implication that like maybe some species had survived the Reapers and was just hiding forever after that. And that just always stuck with me. It's like, oh my god, that's so cool. I have absolutely no idea how you would depict that in a game that would be interesting. Like a cutscene where you fly next to the planet, some person's like, hey, there's a thing there, and just describe exactly what happens. Like, because you can't see that. You just show like a satellite dish. Like, it wouldn't really be that exciting. So the lore works there. Like the log works. But I'm also somebody who's probably never going to include any kind of like codex in any of my games, and you're just gonna have to remember it. I don't fucking know.
I mean,
I'm weird that way though.
But like that, two examples that like remind me of what you just stated, where it's like, how would you even depict this? And it's really strong. One is in Halo 2, the backstory about the I think it was bias, the AIs that were like kind of battling each other from the original race. Oh, just lost our feed. Okay, well, anyway.
No, I'm still here. I'm just getting up, and I don't want you guys to see my butt on the camera.
Cool. Yeah, I think it was Halo 3 was it then, where there's these logs describing the final battle of the race that created the Halos and like what it all came down to and how it happened. And the description for Mendicant Bias and the other one,
I'm gonna go pee. I'll be right back.
was so the description of the war was one that like you couldn't ever really visually represent this. It would be almost impossible because it's describing like ships and things happen. Like the scale it's describing is like a galactic, ridiculous. You would spend the entire budget of your Halo franchise just depicting this in a cutscene type of thing, where you're like, this is what words are for. This is what prose is for. Prose will tell you, will allow you to create this scene in your head because there's no fucking way in hell we'll ever attempt to show you this. And then the second I would say is in the game Lost Odyssey, Mistwalker
I'm in the middle
RPG.
of that game.
Pardon?
Yeah.
You know it?
I'm in the middle of that game right now. Yeah. I started a couple weeks ago. Yeah.
Fucking great. Okay, cool. So the 1,000 Years of Memories, right?
Yeah.
Those little short stories you unlock are, to me, like the best part of the game. I love them. They're a joy to read. I enjoy them so much. And again, you're kind of looking at these stories that you're like, yeah, this is the best thing about them is how they're written, right? A series of like really sketched out, quick visual, like almost like arcade endings to show you these stories would not do them justice at all.
I think you could do them if you like had, you know, a really good anime studio sit down and actually do the whole scene, right? Like there's one where um it's one of the earlier ones because again I'm pretty early in the game. But I think I'm on disc. I just started disc 2. Um,
Okay.
but there's one where like he's hiding in the trenches in the middle of the night, and they're like preparing for war, and
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
this
I
young
remember the
kid
one.
who won't stop talking. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and that one you could animate it, but you would lose the part where he says something like the narrator says something about like he's talking in the way an experienced soldier wouldn't, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like that observation, I don't know how you would put that in animation, but you could still capture the emotional intensity of it. You could still capture the soldiers going, you like, quiet you, and then him grabbing the kid and running him off into the woods. Like, you could still do all that, but it would lose that observation that
Yes,
like
you
he's
lose his
inexperienced.
thoughts exactly.
Mhm.
Have you got have you gotten to Bright Rain?
I don't think so.
No. Okay.
I'm
All
trying to
right.
remember
Well.
where that is. I don't remember all the. I
Okay.
keep playing it
Well.
like once every 2 weeks. It's bad. I'm slow.
That's it's cool that you're going through it. Like those, yeah, those things are each one of those are like a treasure to me. Like it was such a fun thing, and I like the game, but some of those are really really strong, but that's just exactly it, right? Losing the thoughts that the character's having, losing the observational things, the things where the narrator would kick in, and the only way to like save those or salvage it is to do something kind of like what Disco Elysium does, where there's a narrator there anyway, but you know there that gets really weird depending on what kind of scene you're depicting. You can't always have a narrator kicking in to go like, oh, this is what this person's thinking in this one shot here, you know. So yeah,
Yep.
sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I'm completely with you on this. Like, I'm nodding my head. You can't see me, but I'm totally nodding my head at all of this.
Yeah, but in any case, though, with Mass Effect, like going back to it now, I don't know what 2021 me would feel like going through that first one again. But in my brain, it's this fucking amazing, super solid, lovely experience, and like, I do intend to pick up the second one once the opportunity presents itself. I mean, to be
That
perfectly
first
honest, I
game
was
is
okay. Go ahead.
unique even within its own series.
Okay. Where'd you get to?
Me personally, oh, I just did all the Citadel stuff. I did a one, but it was a big stream.
Okay.
I'm gonna go
Okay.
be back to it. It's gonna be pretty much all I do this week. Would you calm down?